Welcome back to Cape Chronicle. I'm Jacob McClellan. Cape Girardeau is becoming a more welcoming place for bicyclists. There are now bike trails in town, as well as signage and stripes for bikes. Heather Brooks is the Assistant City Manager and Director of Administrative Services for the City of Cape Girardeau, and she is spearheading these bicycle efforts. Heather Brooks, thank you so much for coming by to talk with us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Well, first, give us a little bit of a historical background on this bike effort.
Okay. Well, for me, it essentially started back in about 2007. We were approached by two different groups. One was through the Chamber's Leadership Cape program, and another one was associated through the Velo bike program, and they had over 800 signatures on a petition. The interest of both groups was to try to improve the infrastructure that the city had to help cyclists, both for bike lanes, but signage and maybe some education as well. The council at that time thought, let's just put both groups together, pair them up with staff, and have them look into it. The first thing we were able to do was to identify a little bit of money to put some signage in, to share the road signs that everyone sees, the yellow ones. But beyond that, we really didn't have much resources. So we were focused more on researching where the routes might need to be, trying to do some education. But then we realized there was a grant out there that did not require a match, and that's when we pursued that, and that really opened the door to more activities for us.
Well, tell us a little bit about this grant that you're talking about. That didn't require a match.
Exactly, and those are very rare. It's through the Missouri Foundation for Health, and it was in the amount of almost $254,000. Essentially, when I try to explain it to people, there's three factors that the grant worked on. First was the infrastructure with the striping. So those, when on Lexington, Sprague, and Silver Springs, the striping that people see, that was paid for entirely by the grant. The other part was to do bike racks. We wanted to make sure that if people were riding their bikes, that there's locations that they can park their bikes. We also partnered with Southeast Missouri State University on that in order to get some more bike racks on campus. And then the third part of it is just the education and the marketing, to make sure that that those who are riding and those who are in cars are educated on what the rules of the road are, best practices, and then to market people using natural lanes and living a healthy lifestyle. So that's the three different parts of the grant.
Well, where are we at right now in grant implementation?
We are probably 2/3 of the way through the grant. We've done the tangible infrastructure type of projects. There's a few remaining bike racks that we're waiting for some projects to be finished, but the striping is done. Most of the bike racks are installed. What we're moving on to now is the education and the marketing. So we're looking at trying to do a combination of video, some print, get information out through tools we already have, like the Park and Recreation Guide, the website, those types of tools, but then maybe even look at trying to do some flyers and some posters and those types of activities.
What's the feedback that you've gotten from cyclists?
I think people are excited. We always had cyclists in the city, but they were somewhat hidden. You might see a lone rider on Perryville or someone on Lexington, but I think now it's bringing it more to the forefront. It's also dedicating a safety space for them to cycle on. And I think when we begin more education and more marketing, that's only going to increase the cyclists. It's also there for families and kids as well. So you have a whole spectrum of people that are going to be using it. And that's what we looked at when we were trying to identify the routes as well. You have people that are going to use it for work going north, south, east, and west, but we also wanted to connect our parks and recreation or the schools and those types of facilities, because you got different types of users out there. So far I think it's very positive. We hear a few things of making sure we're keeping the lanes clean and all of those things, but once we come back with some education of what the rules are, I think that'll address a lot of some of the things we're hearing, but really it's been very positive.
Now, eventually will all these lanes link in with the trail system, for instance?
Well, the big emphasis on Lexington was to try to begin that linkage, because on the western side it does hook into LaCroix Trail, and then it goes east, and then we wanted to look at doing Sprague, which is why we did that, to try to get it going back down south and hook into some of the trails on the river edge. So we really did look at some of those linkages. The only trouble we will have moving forward if we want to do more is, one, finding funding, but two, you have to have a certain width for the road, and if there's on-street parking or not. So there'd be a lot of things to have to work through if we were going to want to look at doing more.
Has there been any pushback from residents at all over the bicycle trails?
Really, the biggest pushback we got was when we were trying to even identify where the route should go. There were some routes we were looking at that had current on-street parking. We had a lot of residents communicate that they did not want to lose that on-street parking. So really what it did is it forced us to maybe reprioritize a little bit. But once the bids came in, it was our top priorities anyways. But it was a good public discussion to understand how people felt and what the value of the bike routes were compared to on-street parking and other values.
Who are some of the city's partners in bringing this about?
Oh, I'm glad you asked. This wouldn't be possible without them. We have, of course, the Southeast Missouri State University. They're one of our major partners, the Chamber of Commerce, Old Town Cape, and the Cape Bicycle Advisory Council.
Heather Brooks is the Assistant City Manager and Director of Administrative Services for the City of Cape Girardeau. Heather, thank you so much for coming by to talk with us. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. I appreciate it.